Hi, I'm Summer. At my father's funeral, while my eyes were still red, my hands still trembling, my stepmother leaned in and said, "You've got 2 days, then you're out." She called me a guest he never wanted. The house I grew up in, the man who raised me, suddenly erased with a smile and a tissue. But then I found his folder, and I realized someone had been planning my removal long before the casket closed. Was I really the daughter he forgot? Or was I the only one he trusted to protect the truth? I couldn't cry anymore, not because I wasn't sad, but because rage had nowhere to go. It sat just under my ribs, pulsing like a warning siren nobody else could hear. The church hall smelled like wax and artificial lilies. Every pew was full. My father would have hated the fuss. He was never one for dramatics, didn't even like birthdays. But here we were, photos on easels, soft hymns playing through the speakers, Vera in a perfectly tailored black sheath dress acting like she'd lost the center of her world. I sat in the far corner, barely noticed, like an extra in a play I used to star in. No one came over. No one said my name. Someone even handed me a tissue box like I was just another guest who'd lost a coworker. I nodded politely, biting the inside of my cheek to keep from shaking. The slideshow flickered across the white sheet. Beloved husband, cherished mentor, devoted friend. There wasn't a single slide of us, me and him. Not one photo from our road trip to Mount Hood, not even a grainy shot from Christmas when I gave him that ridiculous Oregon Ducks sweater. When the pastor invited Vera to speak, she stepped up without missing a beat. Her voice didn't tremble. He loved deeply, she said. His family was everything to him. And then she listed names. Her 2 sons from a previous marriage. Her mother, who lived down the street, herself. No mention of me. Not even a slip-up. Just a clean cut, like I never existed. I gripped the edges of the funeral program until they creased beneath my fingers. It felt like watching a stranger bury my father. When the service ended, everyone rose and started filing out toward the reception area. I stayed seated. My legs didn't move, and I didn't want them to. I needed one more minute near his photo at the altar, one more minute to pretend it hadn't all changed so quickly. That's when she leaned in. Vera's perfume was soft, almost floral. She put her hand gently on my shoulder like she might offer a condolence. Instead, she whispered with a smile I'll never forget. "You've got 2 days. Then you're out." I didn't flinch. I didn't look at her. My mouth dried instantly, and something inside me hardened. She gave my shoulder a squeeze like we'd just shared a sweet goodbye, then walked away to greet the arriving guests. I watched her hug people with tears in her eyes, thanking them for their thoughts. "She's been so strong," someone whispered behind me. Strong? No. Calculated. As I stood up, a neighbor I hadn't seen in years gave me a puzzled look. "And you are?" I opened my mouth to speak, but the words clung to the back of my throat. What was the point? In this room, I had already been erased. I stepped out into the late afternoon light. The sky was too bright for a funeral. Cars lined the church parking lot, and people laughed in low, respectful tones. I walked past the rows of them, past the murmurs and the casserole dishes, toward my car. My father's car, actually. I'd driven it because I hadn't expected to be unwelcome at my own father's funeral. Sitting behind the wheel, I stared at the dashboard where his scent still lingered. Cedar, a touch of peppermint, and years of road trips and worn jackets. That was when the anger finally started to breathe. It crawled up from my chest into my hands. I didn't cry. Instead, I gripped the steering wheel and whispered to the empty car. Not this time. By the time I reached the house, his house, guests were already gathering on the porch, carrying covered dishes and gift bags with ribbons. Vera was at the door, greeting people like it was a brunch. When she saw me, she tilted her head and waved me in, like I needed permission to enter the home I grew up in. Inside, everything looked staged. Photos of Vera and Dad on vacations I was never invited to. A new mirror in the hallway. His recliner was missing. I wandered into the kitchen, now lined with wine glasses and pre-cut cheese. Someone said, "This place looks so clean, like a fresh start. I clenched my jaw. In the corner, Vera was laughing with a cousin I barely recognized. She saw me, smiled, and said, "Glad you made it in one piece. This day must be hard on you." "I'm not here for the snacks," I said quietly. She leaned in, that same syrupy tone dripping from her lips. "Of course not. It's still your home. For now." My hand tightened around my purse strap. "My father and I lived here long before you came along." She took a long sip of her wine and whispered, "And now it's time to move on. You of all people should understand that." I didn't reply. I turned and walked up the stairs, not because I wanted to, but because I needed to see it with my own eyes. His room had been gutted, the walls were empty, the nightstand unplugged, the dresser drawers opened like a crime scene, half full, half gone. His journals were missing, the picture of me and him on the fishing boat, gone. And then I saw it. My bedroom door had a new lock. Downstairs, laughter echoed through the walls. Toasts were being made, wine was flowing, and the daughter of the deceased was being written out, room by room, drawer by drawer. I stepped back into the hallway, breathing slow and even. This was no longer grief. This was war. If I'm a guest, where's the exit? That thought echoed in my head as I stepped back inside the house, past the murmuring guests holding paper plates and plastic forks. No one looked my way. No one asked where I'd been. In this house, I didn't exist unless I caused a scene, and I wasn't about to give them that. Vera stood in the center of the kitchen like a host at a garden party. Her posture was immaculate, one hand holding a half-empty glass of Chardonnay while the other gestured toward a cheese platter. "We're just so grateful you could come," she said to a woman in a beige cardigan. "He meant the world to us." Us. She caught my eye just as she laughed at something the woman said, then turned back to her with a practiced smile. It was that same effortless performance she gave at the funeral, grieving widow turned pillar of grace. If I hadn't known better, I'd have applauded the act. I didn't feel like eating. I didn't feel like speaking. I moved through the crowd, slow but deliberate, toward the hallway. Voices hummed behind me, glasses clinked, the smell of baked ham and wax candles hung in the air. I tried not to breathe too deeply. Just as I passed the living room, I caught a snippet of conversation. "Who is that again?" a woman asked, whispering but not whispering enough. "She came with her own car. Didn't Vera say she was some college friend of Frank's?" A man answered, sounding unsure. "Yeah, I think she stayed with them once. Years ago?" Right. The guest." The words stopped me in my tracks. Not daughter, not family. Guest. I didn't turn around. I didn't correct them. That would have meant giving them the satisfaction of seeing my face twist, and I knew Vera was listening. Somewhere, she was always listening. I went upstairs. My room, what had once been my room, was at the end of the hallway, left side, second door. I reached for the handle automatically. It didn't budge. The knob turned, then clicked hard. Locked. I tried again, slower, pressing my weight into the wood. Still locked. For a second, I thought maybe I'd chosen the wrong door, but I hadn't. The same old squeak in the floorboard near the doorframe was still there. Downstairs, laughter burst again. A round of applause followed. Maybe someone had made a toast. I walked back down, cutting across the kitchen to find her, because if anyone had answers, it was Vera. She was laughing too loudly at something I hadn't heard. I waited a moment until her eyes slid toward me. "Did you change the lock on my room?" I asked flatly. She blinked. "Oh, yes, I did." As if it were the most natural thing in the world. "I assumed you were leaving soon, and I needed the space cleared for some donation items." I stared at her. "So you locked me out of my own room?" She chuckled softly. "It's just a room, Summer. I thought we were on the same page about moving forward." I didn't reply. I didn't trust myself to. Instead, I turned and walked away before I said something I'd regret. Or worse, something I couldn't take back. Near the front door, something caught my eye. A suitcase. My suitcase. Sitting upright against the wall beside the umbrella stand. My name tag still clipped to the handle. Taped to the top was a yellow sticky note. "Hope this helps make your transition easier." I stared at it for a full 10 seconds, maybe more. It was like someone had ripped the breath from my lungs and replaced it with static. That suitcase hadn't been packed by me. The zipper wasn't even closed all the way, and the clothes inside? Folded. Neat. She had packed me out of the house before the service was over. I didn't pick it up. I left it there and walked through the hallway into the backyard. The sun was starting to sink, casting orange streaks across the sky. The wooden bench where Dad used to sit, where we used to drink lemonade in the summers, was gone. Just a patch of matted grass remained. I stood there for a moment, hugging my arms to my chest. It wasn't just the room, or the suitcase, or even the way people looked right through me. It was the way she did it all with a smile. I turned back to the house, standing still in the doorway for a second, just enough for the wind to catch the edge of my jacket. From the kitchen, I could hear Vera's voice again. It's always hard when people cling to the past, but Frank would want us to move on. Frank, not Dad, not even my husband. Just Frank. Casual. Detached. That's when something snapped, not loudly, not dramatically, just clean. I didn't storm out. I didn't throw anything. I simply walked back into the house, head high, past the hallway of unfamiliar photos, past the crowd that still didn't know who I was, and back out to the driveway. If I was no longer welcome, then I needed to stop acting like I belonged. But this wasn't over. She could lock a door. She could pack a bag. She could erase my name from every program and photo in the house. But she had forgotten one thing. You can't rewrite blood. She kneels down. A corner of a manila folder sticks out. I reached under the hallway bench and pulled the folder free. It was dusty, bent at one corner, and had no label. Just a faint ink stain on the cover, the kind my dad's pens used to leave when he got distracted while jotting something down. My fingers hesitated on the edge before I opened it. Inside, a single sheet of paper, typed, neatly centered on the page, revised will, April draft. Below that, his signature. At the bottom, mine. I stood there for a few moments, not breathing, not blinking. My name had been here all along. The sound of muffled laughter floated down the hallway. Someone cracked a joke in the kitchen. The air around me felt too still for the noise. I tucked the folder under my arm and made my way upstairs. The room that used to be my father's looked like it had been staged for an open house, clean, sterile, like no one had ever lived there. The bedding was different, crisp and white. The bookshelf was half empty. The lamp I'd given him for his birthday a few years ago, gone. The room smelled of lavender and something vaguely chemical, the scent of scrubbed memories. I unlocked the door to my old room with the spare key I'd stashed years ago in the bathroom cabinet. The lock had been changed, but not the deadbolt. Vera wasn't thorough enough. The moment I stepped inside, it hit me. Emptiness. No clothes, no photos. The bulletin board I'd pinned letters and graduation notes to was bare. My nightstand was missing. The drawer where Dad used to sneak in little notes, gone. I opened the closet. Only hangers remained, swinging slightly as if someone had slammed the door too hard before walking away. Downstairs, the hum of voices continued. The world kept moving, but mine was grinding into stillness. I walked to Dad's study. The desk drawer, once jammed with receipts and hand-scribbled lists, was now completely cleared. The pen tray was empty. Even the coaster with the faded baseball logo had disappeared. I knelt beside the bottom cabinet, where he used to hide cards, letters, small keepsakes. Empty. The draft of the obituary we worked on together just a week ago? Missing. I leaned back, looking around at what used to be his space. There was nothing left, not even the shadow of him. It was like Vera had scrubbed the house clean of him and anything that tied him to me. Downstairs, I heard someone call out, "Vera, where's the guest bathroom again?" Guest. I stood up and walked to the kitchen. The counter had a neat stack of funeral programs. I picked one up, flipping through the pages. Vera and the boys, Vera's mother, Vera's dog even. But no Summer, no daughter, not even an honorary mention. I opened the fridge to grab a bottle of water and spotted something taped to the side panel. A copy of the death certificate, neatly laminated. I read it once, then again, as if the words might change. Next of kin. Vera Darnell. Children. None. I blinked once. Then again. The paper didn't lie. Or maybe it did, but it lied in legal font, which meant someone had to prove otherwise. I didn't make a sound. Didn't rip it off the fridge, just closed the door and walked out to the trash bin behind the garage. The lid creaked as I opened it. There, resting right on top, was my father's army badge, his old photo frame from the hallway. The one with our fishing trip picture. She'd thrown him away. She'd thrown me away with him. My throat tightened, but no tears came. My chest just ached in that hollow, stretched thin way grief likes to sit inside you when it has nowhere to land. "You're really trying to erase me, aren't you?" I whispered, not to anyone in particular. The badge was still there, dented but whole. I took it, pocketed it like a secret I wasn't ready to share. The sun was lower now, casting long shadows across the yard. I turned back inside, trying to ground myself with the soft creak of the wooden floor, the hum of voices slowly thinning as guests started to leave. I passed the bench in the hallway again and paused. A second folder, just barely tucked behind the leg, almost invisible in the dim light, caught my eye. I bent down, heart skipping. This one had handwriting on the front. "To be opened if something doesn't feel right." Dad's writing. I'd know it anywhere. I opened it slowly. Inside, bank documents, a list of account numbers, and one small post-it note. "Keep this safe. You'll know why." I did know why. Not completely, but enough. I walked upstairs again, folder clutched tight, closed my door behind me, and sat on the bare mattress, folders spread in front of me like puzzle pieces waiting to be assembled. Maybe Vera thought she was clever. Maybe she believed locking my door and taping up death certificates made me small enough to forget. But the truth had a habit of showing up right when you thought you'd buried it deepest, and I was ready to dig. Her father's legal friend. He had said something once. I couldn't remember the exact words, but the tone had stayed with me all these years. Half warning, half affection. Something about not trusting signatures if you didn't watch the pen yourself. At the time, I'd brushed it off as one of those lawyerly maxims he always threw around. But now, standing in the attic with a manila folder pressed against my chest and the smell of cedar and dust in my nose, I finally understood what he meant. The letter inside the folder was brief, 2 short lines handwritten in my father's familiar looping script. "For my youngest, you were never temporary." Beneath it were photocopies of an updated will, notarized and dated just 6 weeks ago. There was also a deed, the house deed, with both of our names printed clearly across the bottom. My signature was there too. I remembered signing it over the kitchen counter while he made coffee, never thinking it would matter this much. I sat on an old wooden trunk and stared at the documents. The attic was quiet except for the faint hum of the hallway light downstairs and the distant clinking of glass in the kitchen. Vera was probably rinsing wine stems, already crafting her version of events in her head. Holding the folder to my chest, I closed my eyes and breathed deep. For the first time since the funeral, my hands didn't shake. "I knew you didn't forget me," I whispered, as if he could hear me through floorboards and memory. I didn't sleep that night. I stayed in the attic until the early hours, reading and rereading every sheet of paper, checking dates, comparing ink, photographing pages with my phone just in case. When I finally crept back downstairs, the sun was breaking through the slats of the blinds, casting long beams across the tile floor. Vera was already up. She sat at the kitchen table, a silk robe tied tight, a steaming mug of tea in her hands like some morning ritual she'd always owned. Her nails were immaculate, her expression unreadable. "Didn't think you were still here," she said without looking at me. "I think Dad wanted me to be," I replied, voice level, no tremble. That made her glance up, just for a second, just long enough to register that I wasn't tired anymore. I wasn't mourning in the way she expected. Something in her face twitched, then smoothed over as quickly as it appeared. She offered a tight smile and said nothing. I walked past her without breaking stride, folder in hand, but held flat against my side. No need to announce anything, not yet. I poured a glass of water at the sink. Her eyes followed me in the reflection of the window, but didn't speak. After a few minutes of strained silence, she stood, rinsed her mug, and padded back toward the hallway. I waited until I heard her bedroom door shut before heading upstairs again, bypassing my room entirely. I went straight to the attic. The box I was looking for wasn't hidden. It sat right where Dad had always kept his tax records, labeled in his neat all-caps handwriting. Camden, legal drafts. I flipped the lid and dug through forms, letters, old contracts yellowing at the edges. At the bottom was a brown envelope that didn't match the rest. Inside, a list of contact names and numbers. One was underlined, Lyle Camden, private, use if needed. Dad and Lyle had worked together when I was in high school. Lyle was sharp, a bit gruff, but kind when it counted. I remembered him sneaking me gum during one of Dad's endless firm picnics. Last I'd heard, he'd retired, but retired lawyers were still lawyers, especially when it came to the people they cared about. I took a photo of the note and slipped it back inside the envelope. It was time to start being methodical. Downstairs, Vera's voice floated down the stairwell. She was on the phone, light and breezy, talking about getting through the hard part and taking things one box at a time. I sat on the attic floor and opened the Notes app on my phone. Step 1. Catalog everything. Every copy, every signature, every date. Step 2. Confirm with Camden. Step 3. Don't tell Vera anything yet. If there was one thing I'd learned from my father, it was that silence buys time. Around mid-morning, I went back to the kitchen, folders in hand. Vera was reorganizing a drawer full of receipts. She glanced at me and asked, "Are you planning on heading out soon? I was thinking of scheduling a deep clean." "I'll let you know," I said, voice calm. "Just handling a few legal follow-ups." "Of course," she said, tone light but sharp underneath. "Do let me know if you need help understanding anything. These documents can get complicated." I nodded once, then added, "Luckily, Dad and I handled most of this before." She stilled. Her eyes flicked to the folders, then back to my face. There it was, the crack, the first visible one. She didn't speak again as I walked back upstairs. Later that afternoon, I called Lyle. I didn't explain everything, just enough for him to say, "Come by tomorrow, bring what you've got." I hung up and sat at the edge of my bed. No photos, no memories left in this room, but my name was on that deed. My signature was next to his. She could pretend all she wanted, but I wasn't going anywhere. The last file uploaded. Dad, last message. Wave. I stared at the screen for a long moment, watching the progress bar blink. Upload complete. A strange calm settled over me. Not relief, not triumph, just the weight of truth finally landing in a place it couldn't be moved from. His voice was now archived in 3 places: my phone, the cloud, and a backup drive in my glove compartment. Still, I couldn't relax. Not yet. I stepped out of my room, barefoot, the wooden floor cool against my skin. The house was quiet except for the faint hum of the refrigerator and the occasional creak from the beams above the kitchen. Vera had gone out early that morning, claiming she had a few errands to run. I didn't ask. I returned to the attic. The air was stale and dry, but I needed to know what else she had tried to cover up. I crouched near the far corner and pulled out a heavy box labeled Refinance 2022. The label was in Vera's handwriting, not Dad's. Inside were manila envelopes, bank statements, and mortgage printouts, too many for someone who never paid the bills. I sifted through the stack, page by page, until I found a document with a highlighted balance transfer. My eyes scanned the columns. $37,000, withdrawn 3 days before Dad died. Another withdrawal 2 days before that, $18,000, both from accounts that, according to every tax return I could remember, were under his name alone. I flipped to the next page, account number, transfer ID, destination bank. I typed the routing number into a basic search engine and found a match. The account wasn't under Darnell. It was under VD Property Holdings LLC. I exhaled slowly. It wasn't just about the house. She'd been moving money, liquidating assets. While he was alive. The box slipped from my lap and hit the floor with a dull thud, spilling paper across the attic floor. I didn't move to pick them up right away. I just sat there, eyes on the exposed beam above me, thinking, what kind of person drains the accounts of a dying man? Eventually, I gathered the documents, snapping photos with my phone. I saved them into a folder titled Asset Drain, Evidence, then backed them up again. If I was going to get through this, I'd have to think like her, methodical, invisible, dangerous. Back downstairs, the kettle had gone cold. I refilled it, not because I needed tea, but because it gave me something to do with my hands. Vera walked in as the kettle started to whistle. She wore a camel-colored coat, sunglasses still perched on her head. Shopping bags dangled from her arms. "Oh," she said, seeing me in the kitchen. "Didn't expect to see you up here so early." I turned off the flame and poured the hot water into a mug. Didn't expect to find Dad's accounts emptied last month either. She blinked too fast. "Excuse me?" "You heard me," I said, sipping slowly. Strange that he moved that kind of money days before he died, especially considering he hadn't touched those accounts in years. She placed her bags on the floor. "Lawyers are expensive," she said coolly. "You're not seriously thinking of making this messy, are you? If there's nothing to hide, why would it be messy?" Her lips twitched. "Because death brings out the worst in people. You of all people should know that." I smiled without humor. "I'm learning fast." She picked up the bags and walked to the dining room. I waited until I heard her heels clicking down the hallway, then turned off my phone's airplane mode. A missed call from Lyle Camden lit up the screen. Voicemail. I played it back as I walked to my room and shut the door behind me. "Summer, it's Lyle. I got your message. I remember what Frank said. He came in a month before he passed. We made changes. I told him to write you a backup letter. If you've got that, don't let it go. Call me." Today. I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at the floor. My phone buzzed again, a calendar notification this time. Will reading, Friday, 11 a.m. Scheduled by Vera. Of course. I reached into the bottom drawer of my nightstand, pulling out a burner phone Dad gave me when I went off to college. I hadn't touched it in years. It still powered on. Same background photo of us at the coast. Me in a red hoodie, him in his old fishing hat. There was one saved voicemail. I hit play. His voice came through, soft and scratchy. "Summer, I made changes. The folder's under the bench. If something happens, don't trust what she says. Keep what we signed. Call Camden." He paused, then added, "You're the only thing I got right." I played it 3 times, letting each word sink deeper. Not for doubt, for fuel. Back on my laptop, I created a new folder labeled For Attorney Only. I uploaded the scanned bank records, the signed deed, and finally, the voicemail file. Dad last message.wave. The blue upload bar filled. I leaned back and exhaled. It wasn't just about staying anymore. It was about showing her, showing all of them, that I wasn't some forgotten girl from his past. I was his daughter. Legally, emotionally, financially, and I wasn't going anywhere. If she tries anything else, I'll testify. Lyle's words lingered in the hallway even after he left. I stood by the door for a moment, his envelope still warm from his hand. Something about his calm, firm tone gave me more reassurance than any document ever could. The sun was starting to dip behind the trees outside. A long shadow stretched across the front porch, making the old wood look older. I turned back into the house and locked the door behind me, not because I was afraid, but because I was ready. Ready to stop pretending like I didn't see what was happening, ready to draw a line. That evening, Vera didn't say a word to me. She passed me in the hallway as if we were strangers boarding the same flight. I saw her glance at the folders on the counter, but she didn't ask. The silence between us had shifted. It wasn't avoidance anymore. It was tension, a quiet standoff, the kind you only see between people who know exactly what the other is capable of. The next morning, I overheard her on the phone. I was standing just outside the den, the door cracked open barely an inch, when her voice drifted toward me, flat and careful. "She's not well, I'm telling you," she said to someone. "Ever since the funeral, she's been unstable. I'm honestly afraid for the kids when she's around. I just want peace in this house." Peace. The words sat in my throat like ash. She was building a narrative, trying to flip the script before I could speak. I backed away slowly and returned to the kitchen, hands shaking, not with fear, but with the kind of cold, calculated anger I hadn't felt before. When I opened my purse to grab my notepad, I noticed something missing. My prescription bottle. It had been there 2 days ago. I kept it in a small zip pouch, along with a few receipts and a spare pen. Now the pouch was there, but the bottle wasn't. I closed my eyes for a second, then pulled out my phone and opened the voice recorder. "She's erratic," I whispered aloud, mimicking Vera's tone. "I'm afraid for the kids. I just want peace." I hit stop, labeled it Vera Fake Concern, and uploaded it. Later, while Vera was out running errands, or whatever she claimed to do when she disappeared for hours, I used the house computer in the study to print out copies of every document I had. Will revisions, deed copies, bank transfers, screenshots of her shady LLCs. I even printed the email I found in the drafts folder, written but unsent. Subject: mental instability concerns. Summer Mori. Body: given recent erratic behavior and outbursts, I believe it may be necessary to explore professional help or legal guardianship routes. I didn't delete it. Instead, I photographed it, attached it to a folder marked Defense, and left it right where I found it. You want war? Okay. By mid-afternoon, I had assembled 3 identical folders, one labeled Legal Copy, one Safe Deposit, and the last for Camden. I tucked Camden's copy into a padded envelope and left it by the door, ready for delivery. The rest I kept close. I was in the backyard just before sunset, watering the garden that my father once fussed over every weekend. Vera hadn't touched it since he passed. The rosemary was overgrown, and the tomato vines were collapsing under their own weight. That's where Lyle found me. He didn't knock, just walked around from the front and leaned against the fence. "You've been busy," he said. "I had to be." He looked at the hose in my hand, then at the dirt beneath my feet. "You know, Frank used to say you were the only one who understood the value of patience." "He taught me everything I know," I replied, shutting off the water. We stood there in silence for a moment, the breeze rustling through the trees. It was the first moment of real calm I'd felt in days. "I read the file," he said finally. "It's enough. More than enough." I handed him the envelope. "There's a lot more where that came from," I added. He nodded. "If she tries anything else, I'll testify." As he walked away, I realized how far I'd come in just a few days, from being erased at the funeral to handing over evidence to my father's oldest friend. When I came back inside, Vera was sitting on the couch, scrolling through her phone like nothing had changed. She didn't ask where I'd been, didn't ask who had just left. She didn't have to. She knew. I walked to the kitchen, refilled my glass with water, and turned to her. "You left the computer on again," I said. She looked up slowly. "Did I?" "Drafting emails you don't send is a risky habit," I continued, casually. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. "Sometimes I write to clear my thoughts." I nodded, finishing my water. "Just be careful what you leave behind." I went upstairs after that, but I didn't go to my room. I went to his, opened his closet, pulled out the box labeled Estate Planning, sat on the floor, and started reading. If she wanted to use the past against me, I was going to use it to end her. Summer texts her attorney. It's time. The moment my thumb hit send, I set the phone down on the passenger seat and just sat there. Outside, the wind nudged the branches against the windshield. Inside the house, I knew Vera was still on that call, probably laughing, sipping wine, maybe saying something clever about redecorating. She had no idea the floor beneath her was already cracking. 10 minutes later, I was inside, calm as glass. I dropped my bag by the hall table, walked past the kitchen where she was wiping down counters like nothing had happened, and climbed the stairs. Her voice didn't call after me. No, how was your day? Not even a fake smile. That part of the game was over. In the attic, the air was thick with dust and memory. I moved slowly, deliberately. I wasn't searching anymore. I was confirming. I opened a bin marked camping gear, same one where I found Dad's foldable grill and tangled-up flashlights years ago. Buried beneath a rolled-up sleeping bag was his old handheld camera. The black Sony was scratched but intact. Battery long dead, but I had backups. Dad always kept extras in the storm kit. I popped one in, powered it on, and scrolled through the files. Most were videos of trout fishing or birthday candles. Then, one file stood out, dated 1 week before his death. I tapped play. The video opened with his face, close, serious, no smile. His hair was slightly unkempt, like he hadn't planned on filming that day. "If you're watching this," he said, "then she lied." My lungs tightened. I never wanted to cut Summer out. I updated everything, the will, the deed, the accounts. I left instructions with Camden. I hope, God, I hope this finds you in time. The video ended abruptly. No goodbye, just that. I backed it up 3 times, phone, flash drive, cloud, and labeled the folder, Dad, Evidence, Truth. Next morning, I had an appointment with a probate attorney, Mr. Carr, small office, tucked between a dentist and a dry cleaner, but his reviews were solid and he returned calls fast. He greeted me with a handshake firm enough to matter and a warm, steady look. I laid it all out. The video, voicemail, notarized will, signed deed, bank records, email draft, LLC transfers. He took notes, paused only to ask for exact dates. When I finished, he leaned back and exhaled slowly. "We have more than a case," he said. "We have motive, evidence, timeline, and most importantly, intent to defraud." His tone wasn't dramatic. It was measured, confident. I nodded once. "I don't want revenge. I just want it back. All of it. And I want her stopped before she turns my dad's death into a business opportunity." He looked me in the eye and said, "Then we file, immediately." That afternoon, I drove across town to my father's old law firm, not for legal action, but for confirmation. I hadn't been there in years. The lobby smelled like lemon polish and air conditioning. Behind the reception desk stood a woman with silver hair and bright coral lipstick. Her eyes widened the second she saw me. "Oh, you're Summer, the one he always said would run circles around lawyers one day." I smiled faintly. "I'm just trying to stay standing at this point." She reached under her desk and retrieved a file. "He left this with us 3 weeks before he passed. Said if anything ever got messy, you'd come." Inside, a time-stamped notarized copy of the revised will, signed, witnessed, unmistakable. I thanked her, hugged the file to my chest, and drove home in silence. By the time I pulled into the driveway, the sun had started to set, the golden hour. The one Dad used to love for walks. I stepped out and glanced toward the kitchen window. Vera was on a video call, smiling. Her eyes glittered with charm, her voice filtered faintly through the cracked pane. "Once it's all cleared," she was saying, "the house is mine. Then we move fast." I didn't flinch. I walked inside, opened my phone, and typed 2 words to my attorney. "It's time." "You erased everything but forgot one thing. Truth writes itself back." I didn't say it to hurt her. I didn't even raise my voice. I said it the way Dad might have, calm, steady, final. Vera stopped mid-step in the hallway outside the courtroom, her designer heels clicking against the tile. She glanced back, eyes wide for the briefest second before narrowing. The courtroom door closed behind me with a soft click, but the air felt like it had slammed shut. The morning had started with the usual Pacific Northwest drizzle. Gray clouds hung low over the city as I arrived at the community courthouse with my attorney, Mr. Carr. My blazer was wrinkled from the car ride, but I didn't care. My documents were crisp, my files were backed up, my nerves, surprisingly still. Inside the courtroom, people were already filling the benches. I spotted two of my father's former co-workers, a couple of neighbors, and even Mrs. Kent from down the street, the one who always baked him lemon bars in spring. I didn't know if they were here out of support or curiosity. Either way, they were about to see the truth unfold. Vera was already seated at the plaintiff's table, white suit, tissue in hand, dabbing delicately at the corners of her eyes before the judge even entered the room. "Classic," I murmured to Mr. Carr. He didn't reply, but the corner of his mouth twitched. When the judge appeared, an older man with tired eyes and a no-nonsense presence, the room quieted. The clerk read the case. Estate of Frank Morey, ownership dispute and fraud allegation hearing. Mr. Carr stood first, opening with professionalism and restraint. He presented the revised will, the deed, the bank records. Then he pulled out the USB. "We respectfully request to play a statement recorded by the deceased," he said. The judge nodded once. The video played on a small monitor beside the bench. My father's face filled the screen. No music, no editing, just him in a plain shirt, sitting at the kitchen table, looking directly into the camera. "If you're watching this," he began. Then she lied. The courtroom stilled. "I never intended to remove Summer from anything. She's my daughter. I've updated all the legal documents, the will, the house. Everything's been notarized and witnessed. I've left copies with Camden. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise." The clip ended. Silence lingered like smoke. Vera's face had gone pale. Her lawyer leaned toward her, whispering something urgent. The judge turned to her. "Ms. Darnell, would you care to respond?" That's when it snapped. "You don't know what he was like," Vera hissed, standing without permission. "He was tired. He didn't know what he was doing. He said she was a mistake, that he regretted letting her move back in." Gasps rippled through the room. "Order!" the judge barked. I didn't flinch. Mr. Carr placed a folder in my hands. I opened it slowly and removed a single sheet of paper. It was the letter, the one Dad wrote a week before his heart gave out. The handwriting wavered, but it was his. I stood, walked to the witness podium, and addressed the court. "This is what he really thought," I said. Then I read it. "You were the only thing I got right. I didn't add anything. Didn't look at Vera. I just folded the letter and placed it gently on the table before returning to my seat. Behind me, someone whispered, 'God!' Even Vera's lawyer looked defeated. The judge rubbed his forehead, then looked between both parties. "Based on preliminary evidence," he said, "I am ruling in favor of Ms. Morey. All transfers are suspended pending full fraud investigation. The revised will stand as presented. This matter will proceed to probate review." He banged the gavel once. It was done. Outside, the drizzle had turned to light rain. Vera stormed down the courthouse steps, her white suit now damp and clinging to her shoulders. Her phone was already pressed to her ear. "I don't care what the judge said," she snapped. "I'll get it back. She's nothing." I passed her slowly, umbrella open, steps deliberate. As I walked past, I said just loud enough for her to hear, "You erased everything but forgot one thing. Truth writes itself back." She stopped mid-sentence. That was the last time she ever looked me in the eye. The words left my mouth, and I kept walking. I didn't turn back to see how Vera reacted. I didn't need to. I made it to the car, sat behind the wheel, and rested my hands on the steering wheel without starting the engine. I didn't cry. There wasn't any room left for that kind of thing. What had been rage turned to focus, and what had been fear turned into direction. I had crossed the line, and now all that was left was letting the dust settle on the other side. 2 weeks passed. The final court email came on a Tuesday afternoon, the kind of slow, gray day Eugene seemed to specialize in. Clouds low, air still, the whole neighborhood hushed. I opened the message at the kitchen table with my second cup of coffee going cold beside me. Final ruling, sole ownership of estate granted to Summer Morey. Fraud proceedings opened against Vera Darnell. No fireworks, no confetti. Just pixels on a screen that confirmed what I already knew. I exhaled, not loudly, not dramatically, just enough to feel my ribs settle around it. That same afternoon, a news alert popped up on my phone. Local woman arrested on multiple charges related to estate fraud. There was a picture, grainy and zoomed in, of Vera walking out of the courthouse in cuffs. Her coat was wrinkled. Her eyes looked wild. She wasn't surrounded by cameras or reporters, just the truth finally catching up with her. I watched the clip once, then again, and then I closed my phone and set it face down on the table. It was over, but it wasn't celebratory. There was no soundtrack swelling in the background, no great final speech, just stillness. Just me and this house and the silence Dad left behind. I walked slowly through the hall, barefoot on the hardwood floors. The picture of us on the mantel, fishing trip, me in a floppy sun hat, had been put back in its original place. I dusted it once a week now, not because it needed it, but because I needed to touch it. The recliner he always sat in had been taken by Vera weeks ago, probably sold or tossed like so much else. I replaced it with one I picked out myself. Not because I thought I could replace him, but because I wanted something to fill the empty spot without trying to copy it. In the back garden, the rosemary bush had started to bloom again. Tiny white flowers sprouted between the needle-like leaves. I brought a candle out and lit it near the old bench. His bench. It wasn't much, but it was mine now. Ours. "I'm not mad anymore, Dad," I whispered. "Just sad it ended this way." The words didn't make me feel better, but they didn't sting either. They just sat there. Truths that didn't need defending. I stayed out there until the sun dipped low, just enough to tint the sky with the soft amber glow he always loved. When I came back inside, I walked past the dining table. The letter sat there, the same one I'd read in court. I picked it up again, reread the words like I had a dozen times already. "You were the only thing I got right." He hadn't been a perfect man, but he'd been mine, and in the end, he made sure I knew that. I had the letter framed, didn't hang it in the living room or the entryway, just the hallway, across from the laundry room, where I passed it every day. No spotlight, no glass case, just there, existing. Because some things don't need to be seen by everyone to be real. This house wasn't just a house anymore. It wasn't about walls or deeds or legal standing. It was where my history lived, where my hurt bloomed, where I learned to speak after being silenced. And now, it was where I stayed. Some people inherit houses, others inherit silence, and choose to fill it with truth. Sometimes the deepest betrayals don't come from strangers, but from the people who call themselves family. This story wasn't just about property. It was about dignity, memory, and the right to exist in your own bloodline. Have you ever felt erased by someone who was supposed to protect you? If this story moved you or made you think, drop a comment and share your thoughts. And don't forget to subscribe. We have more true-to-life family stories coming your way.